Leave your comments on the Ask Reddit sub, and I'll read your answers on the next episode of LWIAR 2. Anthony Bourdain once said, "There's a guy in my head, and all he wants to do is lay in bed all day long, smoke pot, and watch old movies and cartoons. My life is a series of stratagems to avoid and outwit that guy." Who is that guy for you? And what do you do to avoid him? We came to an agreement and take turns occupying the same body. It's me from 5:30 AM to 5 PM on weekdays. And he gets evenings, weekends and holidays. For me, we haggle on hours, but overall, we both realize we need each other. I went through a period of ignoring him entirely, but it turns out that wasn't quite healthy either. I've got the same arrangement. My guy has left me with a hell of a hangover to deal with this morning. Is this Black Mirror? I swear I've seen this situation before. Fair compromise as long as it stays like that, I say. I've been trying to negotiate some extra time in the evenings for working out and/or hobbies, but he says it will cut into his 4-hour gaming sessions. Edit. You've all given really good advice. I think we're close to reaching an agreement. Being completely serious here, calisthenics, they're easy. You don't gotta have weights or any other workout equipment, and you can just do like 20 squats and push-ups a day and see decent results over time. Also, get Guy to watch Naruto. When he sees Lee drop his weights, he'll wanna start working out more. Good plan. I'll bring it up during our next meeting. In his defense, I use up most of the daily energy reserves that we were supposed to share during my shift, and by the time his shift starts he has very little to work with. You both seem adorable. I used to have a little sign on my desk that said the worst possible feeling is when the person you are meets the person you could have been. It was there to encourage to pursue my goals rather than procrastinate on games, Reddit, etc. I think it's time I dug that sign out again. This made me think of my mother. She was abused as a child and repeated such onto me and my sister, as well as other cruel things. I have the backstory of a villain. That's who I could have been. Who I should have been. I'm supposed to be my mother or my sister, who didn't handle their abuse well. I'm not handling it well either. I have PTSD and memory loss, but I don't break the law or hurt people. I'm not them. So, when I see the person I could have been, I pat myself on the back. I grew up with 2 narcissistic adults and one who was completely codependent. Negligent. I have spent over 12 years in therapy dealing with PTSD from their abuse and negligence. You know what keeps me going? My therapist telling me I am the last stop. I am where the abuse ends. I am my family's agent of change. Looking back at my family history, there is generation after generation of abuse. That was always the case. Until me. Up until people like us were born. No one in our family was strong enough to change. No one had the power or the courage to withstand the abuse and not become it. So yes, you should definitely pat yourself on the back. And know that even on your worst day you are still not them. You're a fighter. You are the last stop. The abuse stops with you. You get to take what was meant to harm you and destroy you and completely alter the course of your family line. Sending you massive hugs of encouragement. Edit. Yal. I did not expect this comment would even really be seen. So thank you internet friend for my first gold, and thank you to everyone in the thread below for the kind comments. To use a really cliche quote, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Find opportunities to show kindness to others, but make sure you also find opportunities to show kindness to yourself. Also fixed some speaking mistakes. I think this fricked me up as much as retirement is a monetary number, not an age. Not really in the spirit of the thread. Money doesn't buy happiness. It buys freedom. Has always bothered me. It's true, and if you think about it, it's seriously fricked on multiple levels. Money doesn't buy you happiness, but being broke doesn't buy you crap. Ouch. Worse than that Ben Franklin quote, a man can die at 25 and not be buried until he's 75. Man, funeral companies were hella inefficient back then. Had those funeral directors been the funeral directors they could have been, I bet folks could have been buried much quicker. It could also be the best feeling in the world, when you realize how screwed up you aren't. Carl Jung said if we deny the shadow self, we only feed it. Yes, basically from Jung's philosophy, there is the self and the shadow self. Think of it almost like Fight Club, where shadow self would be Tyler Durden and the base self would be the protagonist. The point is, deep down you know who you truly want to become as a person, but never go after it. Besides, you never accept your shadow, because either you don't have the courage to do so. In essence, Jung concludes that the longer you choose to ignore, or better said, resist, your shadow self, the harder the pull back to it will be, perhaps with a much more disastrous impact. In order to compensate for the psychological duress of resisting the shadow, think of it as people now chasing their dreams, and to calm the feeling of regret, their shadow manifests itself negatively in the form of substance abuse rather than positive aggression toward their goals. Basically, you'll never feel complete unless you can fully incorporate your shadow self with your base self, and channel traditionally negative behavior traits to a positive result. That guy's kicking my butt right now. You should flip it around. That person is trying their hardest to get you going, but you are fighting back. Are you feeling alright, man? I'm alright, man. Thanks for asking. Just need to figure out how to overcome laziness, that's all. You gotta fight back, man. H is a lazy stoner, he can't be that good of a fighter. This was somehow insanely philosophical to me. Are you stoned? Stoned cold sober. Sobriety is a trick. High on life. Overdosed on friendship. Serenity, brother. Is there such a thing as Mary Jane AA meetings? I've never gotten more replies to a simple comment. Gotcha, there's MA and R, leaves. Yes, there's NA and other local groups whose members have similar experiences. Serious question. Is there a stigma for pot users at a NA meeting? I know there's already an idea of, you can't get addicted to pot. And it just feels awkward to go to NA for the lightest drug when people are dealing with crack and heroin. I've heard that people who go to rehab for pot get teased. The last thing I need is people telling me I'm making it up. Nah, at least at the NA meetings I went to, instead of naming a specific drug, we just called it doc, drug of choice. On top of this, NA deals with addictions, not the drug, gambling, eating, and/or purging, video games, usually with the doc as well, and sex have all been brought up in the meetings I have been to. What is NA? AA equals Alcoholics Anonymous, NA equals Narcotics Anonymous, RA equals the Egyptian sun god, BA equals the sound a sheep makes. All that guy wants to do is do Reddit and play video games. I don't do anything to avoid him. Of course I know him, he's me. I have the same guy, except he also loves beer and good weed. I used to not care, but after moving out and a year spent with my own vices, I am starting to seriously burn out. I would say everyone needs a time to indulge to the point they can't handle it anymore. Now I drink less than I have since I can remember and work out more than I ever had. Might get buried, but my dude in my head is literally Mr. Spock from Star Trek. And I don't avoid him. Hear me out, I discovered through therapy that I needed a mechanism for judgment lessened objective self-analysis, and Mr. Spock is that dude. He can see the most freaked up space crap ever and react calmly and objectively. Mr. Spock, the massive space blob, has a 97.454% chance of consuming the ship and everyone inside within 4/7 minutes. Projections show it will be slow and painful. Kirk, that's horrible. Spock, yes, it is not ideal for our continued survival, but its actions are entirely within the nature of the space blob. So, whenever I get spun up on something in my head, I imagine a mini Spock in my head with a science terminal that can pull all data about me. Spock. Science report. Spock. Data shows that Godspeed Metal is 5.8 days from quitting smoking tobacco and is under great mental distress from the change of chemical intake. He isn't consciously aware of it, but he's attempting to make up an excuse to get gas on a half tank in order to create an opportunity to buy a pack of cigarettes. Thank you. Spock. Sounds like I'm being dishonest with myself. I suck. Spock. I disagree. It's entirely within the nature of a nicotine addict to seek out a source of nicotine intake. This is neither good or bad, just natural. Data also suggests that conscious awareness mitigates the chances of nicotine intake by 89.45%. You've yet to procure a nicotine source as well. Commendable. Just going through that mental exercise will help knock me out of a mental spun up state. help sort out emotions, feelings, all that stuff, into a paused, objective, and most importantly, non-judgmental way. Edit. Holy crap, I'm happy this was received as well as it was. This mechanism has helped myself so much. However, I'd offer a couple of words of advice if you're intending to take on this method as well. Because it can be a frustrating mechanism to employ if you don't have your expectations set correctly. 1. Spock's reports will be amended, appended, referenced and reworked entirely. This is all part of the process. Even Spock had several times where extended analysis was needed to understand something in order to create a way to cope, overcome, what have you. Don't treat everything he says as immutable truth. His analysis is only as good as the data he is able to receive through that mental science terminal. Your initial reports will upgrade that terminal for stronger analysis in the future. 2. You will fail as well, and that's totally okay. He's analyzed far more for me than just smoking. Everything from anxiety, struggles with work, and interpersonal relationships has been reviewed through that science terminal. But sticking with the smoking report as an example, recognizing that getting gas was just an excuse to get cigarettes didn't come from a single analysis, but was referenced from a prior science report. As at one point I had quit smoking, went to get gas a few days later and drove away with a pack of cigs in my pocket. Spock reported, Godspeed Metal formulated a reason to create an environment that allowed his weakened will to procure a source of nicotine. Further analysis shows that nicotine addiction is extremely subversive to Godspeed Metal's psyche at a subconscious level. The strength of control the addiction exerts upon his mind is quite strong. Fascinating. Spock doesn't judge me, it all is what it is, and I respond, that is fascinating. My mind is stranger than I ever thought possible. However, I am more in control because I now recognize this pattern of behavior. I believe that this can be identified at a later point if I do this again. Thank you, Spock. That failure to stop smoking at that time was an opportunity to learn about myself. And FYI, I'm several months smoke-free and still going. 3. This isn't to make someone an emotionless logic machine either. Spock understands human nature as an emotional experience. Humans get horny, sad, happy, angry, depressed, excited, all of that stuff that comprises the human condition. It's all part of the logic of being human. Take that into account, yet strive to be aware of your humanity and make conscious decisions on what you do instead of subconsciously reacting emotionally. 4. Trust your intuition. Your instincts have been developed over millions of years of evolution. Your mind is powerful and can subconsciously recognize threats and boons to your world and yourself. Even if you don't understand why your guts are reacting the way they are, don't dismiss it. Run it by Spock, and if you don't come to a satisfactory answer, you can always revisit later when you've more experience, time, and data. I did something similar when my daughter was born crazy early and sick. She lived for 11 months and spent the whole time in the hospital. When my wife went in for her C-section, I wasn't allowed due to it being full sedation or some nonsense. I just sat by myself in the pre-surgery room waiting like an idiot, not sure what to do. So I imagined old school 1990s Wolverine sitting there with me just for the company. I remember asking him, myself, what the hell I was going to do. You know that angry, scared state you get into. I remember what Logan, I told myself. There isn't anything easy about this. You are just going you have to stand strong the way I showed you. And you ain't alone, bub. Phew, okay, I'm crying right now typing this from just the memory. Funny how things get to you. Still, I hope he would be proud of me as I never ran away or quit or anything and did my best. Probably sounds kind of stupid, but it helped for whatever it's worth. Edit. Thank you for the gold and silver. Cool little token. This is possibly the best take on mindfulness I've ever read, the idea of space between emotion or stimulus and action being filled with Mr. Spock. Lol. I love it. This is the best self-care strategy I've ever heard of. Spock care. That guy wants to settle for anything out of fear of nothing better coming later. That guy is okay with the dead-end job, the abusive relationships and no master's degree. I tell that guy it's never gotten me anywhere. It's the definition of stuck, and I have no intention of being stuck anymore. And I have no intention of being stuck anymore. That's what I like to hear. Keep on keeping on, my man. The guy who wants to go streaking during the Super Bowl halftime show. I avoid him by remembering that prison is not a pleasant place to be. You'll only go to prison if you get a wait wrong comment section. If you ever decide to do it, just don't be fully nude. Then you'll be arrested and have to register as a sex offender. Noted. I'll wear socks. I have the same guy in my head. I quit smoking pot years ago. Before I hit 30, I can still stay in bed all day on some days. What keeps me from doing it? Having a 24 hours lay-in on my laptop. Too often a commitments I've made to myself, friends, and employers. Back in the day, pot made it really easy to give up on those commitments. I miss pot, but I don't miss those times in general, which keeps me from going back. Precisely. You've said it very well. For me at least, getting high just made me very content with doing absolutely nothing. Which is fine sometimes, but I was high all the time and then doing nothing all the time. I was so bored and boring to myself that I had to quit smoking and other drugs completely. It's only been a few years. It still feels like a work in progress, but I'm getting happier with who I am. I like Randy Marsh's quote about it from South Park. Well, Stan, the truth is marijuana probably isn't gonna make you kill people. And it most likely isn't gonna fund terrorism. But, well, son, pot makes you feel fine with being bored. And it's when you're bored that you should be learning some new skill or discovering some new science or being creative. If you smoke pot, you may grow up to find out that you aren't good at anything. I've a bit of a different take to Randy's. I've a little audio studio that I goof around making tracks in most days. When I used to smoke pot, I'd get in these grooves where I'd be jamming on my synth, mixer, drum machines, rolling along, twisting and tweaking sound just for the sake of the sound. It took me a really long time to find that creative headspace again after I quit smoking. It's just something about being carefree and creative when high that I never really feel when I'm sober. I used to get that headspace when I first started smoking pot. But after a while it went away. I'd just sit and smoke. And eventually the magic came back in the form of focus when I was sober. Not stoned. I've tried pot since a couple times, and the magic is there the first time. But it's followed by a couple weeks of smoking myself into nothingness. I've found that for me, it's just not worth it. Bold of you to assume I avoid him. My whole life is a series of stratagems to enable that guy to spend as much time in bed watching cartoons as he can without ending up homeless or unable to pay for weed. Excuse me, but I am you. My God, it's us. That guy is my ADHD. I probably have an extreme case where my meds, which are at high doses, hardly even work anymore. The best way I combat this urge to do something fun, play games, or goof off is to remove myself from any place of temptation. Cut it off before you get the thought of even doing something pleasurable. What I do is that I find empty classrooms at my college and study or do work in there. I will purposefully drive away from my home, which is full of games, food, fun, and comfort, to a classroom just so I don't get the urge. And even if I do, I've created a barrier that takes too much guilt and effort of driving back and doing something fun. I accept that she exists, and love her back to health. I don't outwit that guy, and as such have not committed suicide. Thanks for watching LWIAR 2. The best of all time r/AskReddit submissions and comments. If you like this video, check out the original LWIAR channel. And don't forget to like and subscribe.